I did the same thing for the back fabric. I used wadding as my interface from the waist to the knee line, or you can call this a light breast pad. That's what some persons called it. Then for the hemline, I did the same thing. I used paper stay for the hemline. You can actually continue with paper stay from the knee line to the hemline, depends on how thick you want your fabric to be. So this is my zipper allowance, which is going to be held with just 1 inch downwards. And then for the other side, I will do the same thing. I did not allow my interface to get into my seam allowance. Hello guys, you're welcome to my channel. This is Val Mitch Fit. If this is your first time on my channel, we learn tips, tricks and techniques of making beautiful and amazing outfits. But if you're already part of this family, of course it's nice to have you back here. And this is me saying thank you to my returning subscribers. But if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit on that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to stay updated whenever I post new tutorial videos. Now let's go straight into the tutorial. Today I'll be teaching you guys how to cut a straight skirt, a long straight skirt, but this will not be like a basic skirt. First we're going to be cutting a basic skirt, and then we're going to transform it into something unique and different. So since we're cutting a skirt, I'm going to be folding my fabric with my highest round lower body measurement, and that will be my round hip measurement. So you have to fold your fabric like so, like you can see right here, in two. So after taking down my round hip measurement, I'll be adding 1.5 inches as my side seam allowance. You can decide to do 1.5 or you can do 2 inches. Now here I'll take my round waist measurement. For this skirt, I would not be adding any dart seam allowance. That is, I would not be including any dart seam allowance measurement for my skirt, both for the front and for the back. Now I'm going to take my waist to my hip line measurement. This measurement really depends on the height and the body size of the person, whether it's for yourself you're making for or for somebody else. For me, I'm using 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm marking these points because that is where I'm going to start taking my round hip measurement. Guys, you can see how I placed my tape at the top. In case you are making a gown, you have to come down by half an inch because that will be your seam allowance. Now for my waist to my knee line, I'm using 18 inches. Like I said earlier, for the waist to the hip line, it depends on the height and the body size of the person. So for me, I'm using 18 inches for my waist to my knee line. So please make sure to come down by half an inch from the waist in case you are making a gown. But if you're making a skirt, that is totally different. So I'm taking this measurement like I'm making a gown. Now I'm going to take my round hip measurement. Please note this is my round hip measurement divided by 4. If you're a beginner, what I did was to divide my round hip measurement into 4 places and then put down what I got after dividing. Now I'm going to take my knee measurement. So I have my round hip measurement divided by 2 right here, and then I'm going to subtract 3 inches from this measurement. So just count backwards from your round hip measurement divided by 2. Count backwards to 3 inches, and after doing that, then you break the tape into 2 like so. Just place the start of your tape on that point and divide it by 2, like you can see what I did right here. After dividing by 2, I got 8 half and about 2/4 inches. So my round hip measurement, I'm using 40 and half. I divided it in 2 and I got 20 and quarter. I moved backwards by 3 inches from 20 and quarter and I got 17 and quarter. I divided 17 and quarter in 2, which gave me 8 half and quarter. So if you do not want to subtract 3 inches from it, you want to subtract just 2 inches because you want the nail line to be extremely free, then you just have to break your tape after subtracting 2 inches from the measurement. Now what you would have is 18 inches, which will give you 9 inches after dividing 18 by 2. But I'm using the first measurement I took, which is 8 half and quarter. because I want the hip to the knee line to be more fitted. That is why I am using that measurement, but you can do as you prefer. So what I'm going to do here is to mark down my 8 1/4 inches on my knee line, or you can go ahead to mark the 9 inches if you feel like the 8 1/4 inches will be too tight for you. So I'll put down my 8 1/4 inches for my knee line measurements. The next step to take is to connect these 3 points together from the waistline to the hip line and then to the knee line. The full length of my skirt is 45 inches. That is from the waistline to the full length is 45 inches. If this were to be a gown, I would be making use of 62 inches because my half length is about 17 to 17.5 inches. So I'm going to mark my waist to my hip line and then to my knee line. After I mark to my knee line, the next step I'm going to take is to mark same measurement on the knee line all the way down to the hem line. So this is a straight skirt. Remember, this is a straight skirt, not a pencil skirt. So I'm taking the measurement for the knee line all the way down to the hem line. I'm going to make sure to mark accurately so that I don't have one kind of shape for my skirt. So as I'm marking it down, I'm taking my tape downwards like so till I get to the hem line. Then I'm going to connect all the points down together like you can see me do right here. Guys, trust me, this is actually very easy to cut, and to take the measurement is actually very easy. So here I have my hip measurement line here. I'm going to take the 1.5 inches I said for the side seam allowance. You can decide to do 2 inches, you can decide to do just 1 inch, depends on what you want, but I'm doing 1.5 inches because I'm not using inseam finishing for this skirt, that is the sides of this skirt. So I'm doing just 1.5 inches. And when you get to the knee line, make sure you bend the curve like you did for the initial line. Don't just mark it straight down, but make it just the way you made the initial line, which is the actual body measurement. I am hinting on this solely because of beginners watching this tutorial right now. So I have 1.5 inches for my side seam allowance, and like I said, I am not using inseam finishing for this skirt. So after turning the sides with my lining with half an inch, I will be left with just 1 inch for shaping my skirt. So at the end of the day, I would have 1 inch for my side seam allowance when I'm done with this skirt. So now I am connecting the points together for my side seam, and you can see how nice it's looking already. You can see how accurate the measurement looks from the side seam allowance. If you feel like you want the knee line to be more fitted than this, you might feel uncomfortable when wearing this, like the knee measurement might be too tight for you to move your legs. So it's either you losing the knee line to make it free, or you just go ahead to leave it this way. But you can have your shape looking all beautiful and classy if you have hip pads in your dress. So the hip pad is going to make the hip line come out very well, looking really shapy. But I am not using any hip pad for this. This is how my shape is going to come out after making my skirt. So now I'm going to cut the back side of the skirt, and this is what I'm doing here. I placed my front pattern on my folded fabric, and I left about 2.5 inches for my zipper allowance. Remember, I said the back side would also not be having any dart seam allowance or any dart lines. So I went ahead to cut on my pattern paper and eliminated my dart seam. You can see how it looks like here on my pattern paper, same measurement as on my main fabric. So I am going to pin this down. You can see where the knee line stopped, and you see how accurate the measurement is from the pattern paper. So for the zipper allowance area, it's going to be about 2 to 2.5 inches on the hip side. So that point I'm holding, but now I'm going to pin down to my main fabric so that I can cut out this shape for my back pattern. So guys, the next thing I'm going to do here after pinning down is to cut from the waistline. So I'll just take my measurement straight down to the hemline. I have about 1 inch extra from the knee line down to the hemline. So I'm just going to take my tape rule to measure this out and mark so you can see this clearly. So I'm marking out 1 inch from the knee line down to the hemline. So this is going to be the allowance for this part. I'm going to just roll a straight line to connect it. Then I'll cut out with my scissors. For the hip line, I came out by about 2 inches, and then for the waistline, I came out with 1 inch. So this is what I did. I did not add any dart seam line for the back pattern. You can see I taped the dart line on my pattern paper. So I'll take that away to continue with what I have on my main fabric. You can see the shape on my main fabric. See what it looks like right here. When I'm holding my allowance from the waistline, I'm going to hold with 1 inch from the waistline to the knee line, which means on the hip line, I'm going to have about 1 inch extra on the hip or the butt area. So that's the zipper allowance area. I'm just going to mark it straight so that you can see what I mean. So I'll just hold on my zipper with 1 inch from that waistline down to the hemline. So I'll take this away to continue. The next I am doing here is I went ahead to iron interface on my main fabric. Here I just want to thicken this area a bit, that is from the waistline to the knee line. I am not using hip pad or hip and butt pad for this. I just want to thicken it a bit and give it a little bit of volume, not like it's that much. Then I'm going to, you can see where I stopped. I'm stopping on the allowance. I will not be sewing into the interface. Then for the hemline, I used paper stay for the hemline. For the waist to the knee line on the main fabric, I used wording as the interface. You can see how the shape looks like from the right side. I did the same thing for the back fabric. I used wording as my interface from the waist to the knee line. Or you can call this a light breast pad. That's what some persons called it. Then for the hemline, I did the same thing. I used paper stay for the hemline. You can actually continue with paper stay from the knee line to the hemline. Depends on how thick you want your fabric to be. So this is my zipper allowance, which is going to be held with just 1 inch downwards. And then for the other sides, I will do the same thing. I did not allow my interface to get into my seam allowance. And this is how the shape looks like on the right side. Now go ahead to cut my lining same way I cut my main fabric. But the difference here is that I'm going to be shortening my lining on the hemline with about 1 inch. I went ahead to fuse paper stay interface on the hemline just like I did for the front part, but I will not be adding wording to this lining. So for the back, this is the same thing I did for the hemline, but for the hip area, that is the waist to the knee line, I would not be adding wording to it. Now this is how it's going to be when I put my both fabrics together, that is the main fabric and my lining. So I will just stitch on the hemline to turn from the hemline to the waistline. So you can see the 1 inch space I left on my lining. So by the time I stitch my lining to the hemline of the main fabric, is going to come up by 1 inch. When I take this to my sewing machine to stitch, the first part I'll be stitching will be the hemline, and then I'll stretch the lining to the waistline, then continue my sewing. I'll turn the zipper allowance and then turn the sides of the fabric. I'll do this for the both sides and the front, and I'll come back to show you guys, which I have done right here. So see what I did. I stitched the hemline of the fabric. This is the front pattern. This is how the shape looks like because I have turned the sides with my lining. So this is how it looks like on the wrong side of the fabric. You can see how the wording looks like inside the fabric. It's going to make that part to be a bit thicker than it was. So I left the allowance for where I'll be stitching together my front and my back pattern. So this is how it looks like on the hemline. See the 1 inch I left for it to give that part like a neat look. So the next I'm going to do is to show you how it looks like on the back part. The same thing I did for the front hemline, I did for the back. You know, this was supposed to be a dress. I wanted to make this into a dress. That is why the waistline is looking this way. I was going to make this a whole dress, but I changed my mind and made it into a skirt. But for you who is making a whole dress, which is the top attached to the skirt part, this is for you. So what I did here was to turn this side of my waistline, that is the back waistline, starting from the zipper allowance to where my that line would stop. So that is what I did here. You know, I am not having any dart on this, so just go ahead to measure where your dart line would stop, starting from your zipper allowance, and then turn that part of the waist for your dress. So this is basically for an inbuilt top, that is where you have your top longer than the half length. Now you go ahead to hold your zipper allowance, except you are having an inseam finishing that will be totally different from how it is looking right now. So now let's go ahead to the next step. So see what I did here. I went ahead to hold my zipper allowance, and this is how it looks like on the right side. I held my zipper allowance with 1 inch from the waistline to the hem line. This is how it looks like on the wrong side. So I'll take this to my pressing table to open on my seam line with my pressing irons to flatten this so it will come out looking really neat and nice. Now it's time for me to mark out my round body measurement, which is my round hip measurement, my round knee measurement, and I'll also do the same thing, marking out my round waist measurement. If you already have your measurement marked, just go ahead to your sewing machine and sew this together. But now I'm going to mark it. So this will be my round waist measurement. I do not have any dot lines. This is how it's looking like. So I will connect these points together down to the hem line. If you cannot do this, just go ahead to mark from the knee line to the hem line also with your round knee measurement. So I'll do this for the back. This is the back part, and I'll do the same thing for the front part. So this is the other side of the back part. If you don't want too much stress, you can do this. You just go ahead to mark out the other side of the back part. It will be so much easy for you to sew when you take this to your sewing machine. So I'm just going to mark the same way I marked the other side of this skirt. Now this is the front part. I would go ahead to pin the back and the front together because I just want to take this to my sewing machine and start to sew instead of arranging and arranging. So I'm just going to pin the both of them together with my pins, starting from the hemline, and I'll make sure the center back is accurate with my center front. So this is what I'm doing, is to pin the both pieces together. Like I said earlier, this I was going to make into a dress, but I later on changed my mind to make it into a skirt. But if you are making a dress, then these steps are for you. So after sewing the sides together, holding the both sides together, then what you need to do is to loosen out your zipper allowance and sew in your top. So I am turning this into a skirt after this part, but the problem here is that I realized I do not have the continuation of this video, which is turning this into a skirt with a waistband, because I was so much in a hurry to finish up this outfit for my shoot. Sorry guys, please do not get upset, but I'm going to explain what I did here. So I decided to make this into a skirt, and I didn't want to make a basic skirt for this. The first thing I did was to loosen the zipper allowance and then loosen the already sewn part on the back waistline. And after I did that, I trimmed off half an inch from the back and also from the front waistline so that I would be able to fix my waistband and still end up with my preferred skirt length, which is actually 45 inches long. Guys, I hope this explanation is clear enough for you to understand. So you can see the nude fabric I have on the skirt starting from the waistline. What I did was, before installing my zipper, I opened up the zipper allowance and placed my nude fabric on my skirt. I opened up the zipper allowance, I opened up the side seam allowance to an extent, let's just say about 8 inches before my waistband. So I opened that part up and placed my nude fabric on my skirt. But before I did that, I doubled my nude fabric with my nude net. So if you have seen my previous video on Victorian corset, you will see how I doubled my nude fabric with my nude net. That is just the same thing I did for this skirt. I doubled the nude fabric with the net and pinned the both of them together. After I did that, I placed the nude fabric on the skirt and cut out the shape I wanted. Just go ahead to mark with your chalk the shape you want for the nude fabric. You can decide to do any shape you prefer, but I came up with this shape and I liked it, so I went ahead with it. Before you cut the fabric, chalk out the shape that you want. Place your nude fabric with your doubled net on your skirt and pin down. After you do that, you mark out the shape with your chalk on your nude fabric, and after doing that, you stitch the both piece together. That is your nude fabric and your skirt. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. I'm going to explain this again. First, you open up your zipper allowance and your side seam allowance if you have already done that, if you have already sewn the both piece together. And after you do that, you cut out your nude fabric to about 8 to 10 inches, then double it with your nude net. I did double with my net, my nude net, just like I did for my top. Then after you do that, you place this fabric. You know you are going to cut the front separate from the back because you are going to be stitching the both piece together. So I placed my fabric, the nude fabric, on my skirt, the front side and the back side, and pinned the both of them together. After I did that, I used my chalk to mark out the shape that I want for the nude fabric, starting from the back side, starting from the zipper allowance. That is what I mean by the back side. Starting from the zipper allowance, I chalked out the shape all through to the other side of the zipper allowance, all through to the front to the other side of the zipper allowance. I created the shape and then I went ahead to stitch this together with my sewing machine. I stitched on the line that I marked for the nude fabric. The exact line that I marked, I stitched on it. You can create about 1 or 2 stitches for this. So after I did that, I trimmed off my excess. I reduced it to about quarter of an inch, not even half of an inch, about quarter of an inch. I'm talking about the excess left after stitching this both piece together. So I trimmed that off and proceeded to fixing my waistband. Just like I doubled the net for the nude fabric for this skirt, I did the same thing for the waistband so the both of them can look the same. So I will not be having any difference in the looks. My waistband was cut out with 3 inches in width, that is was 3 inches wide, while the length is the size of my round waist measurement with 4 inches extra. So after stitching, I would trim off the extra that I would not be needing. After I did all that, I proceeded into beading the line to cover up that rough edge that I have on my skirt. I actually wanted to bead this part to give this a very nice look, to give it a not basic look. So beading here and still covering up the rough edge is like a plus plus for me. So guys, you can see how I am going with the beading. If you do not know how to bead, it's nothing difficult, so I'm just doing like a very simple beading process here. I am placing in about 2 to 3 of my beads. What I'm using here, I'm using pearl beads and crystal beads for this, so you can choose whatever kind of beads you would like to use. The white beads you see are the pearl beads, while the black shining beads are the crystal beads. So you can see how I am tacking my beads on my skirt. Though I have already beaded the first line, the first pearl beads line, now I am on the crystal beads. So I am inserting about 3 beads in my thread. I used a matching color thread, a nude color thread for this, so it will not be obvious. So I put in about 3 beads in the thread, and on that spot where I have my beads settled on, I put in my needle to the other side of my skirt, that is the wrong side of the skirt. You can do this without your needle coming out from the wrong side or your thread showing on the wrong side, but because I was so much in a hurry, I wanted to do this ASAP, so I was just going in, out, in, out. So you can see what I'm doing right here. I'm trying to bring out my needle back into the right side. On the same spot I poked my needle into the wrong side. Guys, because I was so much in a hurry, my thread kept tying and I kept struggling with pulling out my thread from the other side. This was taking so much of my time and I was almost getting frustrated here, but I managed to loosen the thread and continued with my work. At some point, I even had to cut out my thread and tie it back to continue with the work. When I started with this beading process, I said I started with inserting 3 beads before tacking down to the skirt, but later on I had to stop to continue with just 2 beads because it wasn't giving me what I wanted. I needed the beads to be really firm to my skirt. That was why I continued with inserting just 2 beads. You can actually do 1 bead at a time, depends on what exactly you want and how much time you have on your hands. For the waistband, if I should go back there, like I said, I cut out the width with 3 inches. Then I took this to my pressing table and ironed or folded the fabric equally. Like it is 3 inches, so I folded it equally to 1.5 inches. After doing that, I then folded half inch in on each sides of the 1.5 inches, leaving me with just 1 inch. So that half inch is what I would use to stitch on my skirt. I would start with stitching half inch from the inside of the skirt, which is the wrong side. So after stitching half inch from the inside of my skirt, that is the wrong side, then flipping it over to the right side with my half inch folded in, I will then top stitch on the right side. So that is exactly what I did with the skirt waistband, just this process. So if you follow through with this process, you will end up with what I did for my skirt. So even if you'd prefer to make a whole dress, like you would like to make a whole dress, which is the lower part attached to the top of your dress, then there will be no need for this waistband. All you just need to do, and you still want to have the nude fabric on the skirt part, then just go ahead to attach the nude fabric like I did for mine, or you can have another way to do it, depends on what you'd like to do. So in case you want to do it like this, you can go ahead to attach the nude fabric and leave your half inch that you would use to sew the lower part, which is the skirt part, to the upper body's waistline or the top of your dress. So guys, I am totally done with the making of the skirt. I'm done with the beading. So you can see the pattern created from the wrong side of the skirt, and this is how it looks like from the wrong side of the front skirt. You can also see how the side seam allowance looks like from the wrong side. This was like an emergency thing, but I'm happy with the outcome. I like how it came out. So I fixed the hook for the back. I'm just going to open this up and show you guys how it looks like from the right side. So this is the back side of my skirt, that is the right side. You can see that, you can see how the pattern came out. It's looking really beautiful. I like the pattern I created for the skirt. So I left my beads at only 3 lines. I'll show you guys how the front looks like. I'm going to flip this over. This is how the front looks like. I made only 3 lines for my beads, and I decided to make it look sort of like a waist bead with the nude fabric creating the body illusion. So that nude fabric there was just to create my body illusion, while the beads was to separate the nude fabric from my Ankara fabric. I hope you guys like it. So this is how it looks like from the side. I beaded across my side seam allowance to give it that waist bead illusion. So I'm going to show you guys how it looks like on my body. And here I have come to the end of this tutorial. I hope this tutorial was able to show you guys how to make this skirt and give you some ideas to making your skirt different from basic. Please guys, I hope you subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell not to miss out on new tutorials that I will be posting. For now, I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.